For coming to Zippia's Land a Job webinar series. My name is Chris Colmar. I'm one of the co-founders of Zippia. And this is our first in a monthly series of talks to help you through the job search process, all the way from resume optimization to negotiating your salary offer further down the line. Just a little bit on Zippia. So we founded the company 6 years ago. It's as a way to help professionals progress through their career. We have a database of several million resumes, and so we can use that to show you examples of how real people have moved through their careers and kind of the skills they picked up along the way. And our goal is really to help you at the end of the day make strong career decisions and get the job you want. So thanks to all of you that submitted a question beforehand. We'll try to answer the most frequently asked questions during the talk. And feel free to ask additional questions during the talk. You can use the chat feature or the Q&A feature. We'll have a Q&A afterwards, and you can also kind of ask them during if you want. And so with that, today we're happy to have Don Pippin with us. Don is an executive and HR leader for Fortune 550 and 500 companies. In 2008, Don launched Area Talent with a focus on helping clients identify their brand. As a certified professional resume writer and certified LinkedIn expert, Don guides clients through career transitions across companies like Google, Apple, Amazon, and Netflix. When Don is not helping people land jobs, he can be found traveling around with his dog on his Instagram page, and I'm hoping one day she'll be the breadwinner in the family. And with that, I bring to you Don Pippin.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks for having me, and I appreciate everyone who's joined today. So most people come to me for similar reasons to why you may be joining this presentation today. I work with entry-level clients through C-level executives, and there are three main reasons why people come. One is the thought of doing a resume just completely bores them. They would much rather watch paint dry. The other is the thought of doing a resume just causes high anxiety. They have no idea where to start. They don't know what to put in. They don't know how long it should be, what it should look like, and those types of things. And the other is they have a resume, they thought it was good, but they're not hearing back from the companies that they're applying to. So my job is to help them identify what those pain points are. Sometimes they're as simple as cosmetic issues. The formatting of your resume will impact how an ATS reads it. And an ATS is something that we're going to talk about quite a bit through this. It's what's referred to as an applicant tracking system. So when you're applying online, chances are you're applying through a computer system that is parsing your information before it gets to a human. Depending on the company, every resume may be seen by a human. But for large organizations, they really rely on the algorithms in their applicant tracking system to weed out applicants that are not a fit for them. So what we're going to talk about today is best practices to make sure that your resume has the best chance of getting through an ATS. And then once getting to a recruiter, it compels them to want to pick up the phone and give you a call. And then the third audience that we're writing this for is the hiring manager or board. And we want to make sure that when they see your resume that it's speaking to them and they understand it. So there's a fine line in the language that we want to put into a resume. We want it to be able to get through the ATS, be in a language that's simple enough for a recruiter to understand, because chances are that recruiter does not have your background or expertise. So writing it in a language that is very specific is going to be a challenge for a recruiter to get past. But the third is making sure it really speaks to that hiring manager and showcases your achievements. All right, so before we start, I just want to share a few facts with job search. It's an average of 2.5 months that people are searching for jobs. And the goal is that we can reduce that time significantly by targeting your resume for your specific search. And 27% of job seekers are spending more than 6 months looking for a job. And for every job you're applying to, you're one out of approximately 250. And lately, I have been seeing jobs that have had over 1,000 candidates that are submitted to it. And these are high-level jobs. They're not entry-level server jobs. So competition is strong uh, because it's so easy to apply, right? You just click and apply. And that's one of the things that people fall into the bucket of, is doing that click and apply, which is number 4, that you all are applying for about 20% of the available jobs. So the competition is tough. So you want to make sure that when you are using the click and apply method, you're getting the results that you need. But 80% of these jobs are what we call the hidden job market. They're not necessarily advertised or advertised in places that you would be expecting to see them, and they're found usually through networking. So while you need a resume, you still want to be networking when you're doing your job search. So when we get into the compatibility portion of your resume, this part of the presentation is key and the most important. Word docs and PDFs are preferable. I side on Word doc only, but I give clients both formats so they can print, because a PDF typically will print cleaner than a Word doc. But you want to stay away from columns, charts, graphs, and photos that have information in them that you want them to know. So the reason is that not all ATSs can read columns, charts, and graphs. So if you put information in those charts and graphs, it's just for aesthetics. It's not going to be read or scanned. It's not going to help you in any way pass through an ATS. And in some cases, depending on the ATS, it may throw your resume out because it can't read it properly. So there are hundreds of ATSs. We don't know what ATS a company may be using, and we definitely don't know what version they're using. So when I was at the Bank of America, we use a large, very well-known ATS, but we had an old version of it, an old version that could not read PDFs. So if someone submitted a PDF, we never saw it. So we want to make sure that the format that we're sending is going to be 100% compatible. That's why I recommend sending a Word doc. If it tells you you have the option, then you can upload a PDF. And a common question is around length, like how long should my resume be? So if you're entry level, meaning 5 years or less of experience, you want to keep your resume to 1 page. And when you are mid to late career, you can move to a 2-page resume. And I'll see clients that come to me who've been working for 10, 15, 20 years, and they still try to fit everything on 1 page because that's what they remember hearing in college, was they need to keep everything on 1 page. Well, that is only when you're starting out. Once you've had a few positions, you move to a 2-page. And if you're a C-level executive, then you can go up to a 3-page. If you're in academia, then that's more of a CV, and those can be 20+ pages depending on your credentials. But for job seeking and non-academic settings, you want to stick with the 1, 2, 3-page rule. And font size matters when it comes to a resume, and font too. So applicant tracking systems can't always read a font size that's below 11. So the smallest font size you want to use is an 11. You want to stay away from Times New Roman. It's a dated style. It doesn't look good on paper. So I recommend Calibri Light. It's modern. You can fit a little bit more words on the page. And a font size 11 or 12 is ideal. And then most importantly, headers and footers. I see a lot of resumes that come through where all of your contact information is in a header. Well, an ATS can't read headers. No ATS. So if you put something in a header, it's not being seen. So they have no way to contact you unless if they physically pull your resume up. And chances are when you're applying to a job with 1,000 applicants, they're going to be relying on the applicant tracking system. So it is okay to put your information on a 2nd or 3rd page of a resume in a footer. And it is advisable to do that in the event that they misplace your 1st page, they still have your contact information on the 2nd page. You just want to make sure that it is also included in the body of your resume. So we're going to spend the rest of the time talking about the structure and we're going to talk about building out bullets and what information you should be putting into a bullet to help make you stand out. It's not just about optimizing for the ATS, it's also making sure that you stand out from the others that are applying to this position. So in the structure, first we're going to go over the sections of your resume. You want to put conventional titles. So in each section, you want it to say, for example, experience, education, competencies. You don't want to use popular pop culture phrases that sound interesting. You want to make sure that it's relevant and standard. So side with experience, competencies, or skills, and education. And one of the things to note, the order of your content on your resume is because there's what's called the 6-second rule. You have about 6 seconds to capture their attention of whether or not they're going to be either looking through your resume more or picking up and giving you a phone call or tossing you in the pile. So when we get into the bullet structure, that's really where we expand on that 6-second rule to be able to get them to read for a longer period of time. So of course, you're going to start with your contact information, and you're going to include your name. And under that, I include the position title, so they know exactly what job you're looking for and what you're qualified for. And best practice is to mimic that to the job that you're applying to, which means you update your resume for every job you're applying to if you're applying to different titles. Some companies title their jobs differently and unique. So what may be a region manager is an area manager for another company. So you can change that title so it matches their keyword searches on their side. You're going to put your phone number and your location, just your city and state. Don't put your full address. You want to include your email and your LinkedIn profile. If you're creative or work in entertainment, I'm in Los Angeles, so I have a lot of entertainment clients. We link their portfolio so they can go and see the different projects and movies, films, and commercials that they've worked on. Outside of that space, it is advisable to include your LinkedIn profile there. And a tip for your LinkedIn profile is to optimize the URL. So if you are in your LinkedIn profile, you go to it, you're going to see the URL pop up at the top. And if you don't optimize it, it's going to be very long. It's going to have a bunch of characters after your name. You're going to want to edit that URL to clean it up. Take out all those characters so that when you do put it on your resume, it takes up less space. All of this will fit on one line and is easier to find you on LinkedIn. And then the next section, what I start a resume with is what I call a value proposition. This is not an objective statement. An objective statement is outdated. We know that you're looking for a job. We know that what your qualifications are by your resume, but we want to showcase some high-level achievements that you've done throughout your career as to why they should choose you. So I do it in sentence structure. Some people will do this in bullets. There is no right or wrong way. You can list a few bullets of high-level achievements that you've done, or you can create more of a story, which I find to be more engaging and interesting to read. Think of it as your sales pitch. You are selling yourself. That is what a resume is. It's a sales document. So, and a brag sheet. And some people are timid about putting information on the resume, feeling that it makes them sound like they're bragging. But that's exactly what your resume is it's selling them on what you've done, telling them the value that you're bringing to the organization to make it worth their investment in you. And then I follow that up with the competency section. So instead of ending the resume with your skills, you want to put it in the top. This is really important if you're a technical client. If you are, say, an AWS engineer, they're looking for specific technical competencies, and you want to make sure that they see those right away, that they know that you have that experience, and you pull that from a job description, which we're going to talk about here in a moment. And then after your competencies, we're going to go into your experience section, or what I refer to as the meat of the resume. This is the most important, critical part of your resume. And there are a few things that you want to do when you're outlining how to build out your experience section. So you're gonna, of course, list the company's name, their city and state, and your dates of employment. My recommendation when putting dates of employment is just use years. Don't put months and years, just use years. This helps for a few reasons, but the main one is if you have a 3, 4, 5 month gap in your employment, this will mask that. So you don't have to worry about those questions that may come up. They don't know. They see that you worked at a company until 2005, and then you started another job in 2005. And then under the company name, put a brief one-line summary of what the company does. I like to include information around their size and their revenues. This is really helpful for a recruiter who may not, if you work for a smaller company that they're not familiar with, this gives them a good idea. So for example, if you're looking to get into an agriculture company and you've worked for an agriculture company before, but it's small, then they see that by putting this example, this line here, they can see that you have experience in their industry and they're more apt to continue reading. Then of course you want to list your job title, and then you're going to break your experience down into 2 sections. So you're going to have a brief summary of your responsibilities, things that you do every day that are part of your job. And we're going to look at an example to show you what that looks like too. But you want to stay away from, when you get to the bullets, of listing those job responsibilities, because the task, we want to move your resume from being task driven to achievement based. Most resumes that come to me tell me what they do. It reads like a job description. You want it to read more like your summary of accomplishments tied to the relevant keywords of a job description. So that some brief summary under your title should be no more than 5 lines. And then when it comes to bullets, you want to have between 3, maximum of 6. If you get over 6, use subheadings. So there's no more than 4 bullets per subheading. It makes it much easier to read. It's also aesthetically pleasing. And the example that I'm going to show you is one of those where we do go over 6 bullets. So I break it into subheadings. And then you're going to end it with awards, certifications, and in rare circumstances, volunteering. So volunteering really should only be with, if you're a recent graduate and you have limited experience. In the US market, we don't want to see things like hobbies, interests, marital status, photos, and volunteer. Your LinkedIn profile is a great place to highlight those things. You can put your volunteer experience there. You can put your family life in your about section, which I prefer because it makes it more of a 360 view of who you are. And then the last thing that you want to put on your resume is your education. So there was a recent study by SHRM where employers, they look at the very bottom for education. So we don't want to put that in any other area other than the very bottom. The exception to that rule is, again, if you're a recent graduate who doesn't have experience, then you'll want to put your education at the top so they know right from the get-go that you just graduated. They're not going to be expecting this depth of information as they go through your resume. So what I call, what most people call bullets, I refer to as achievement statements. And an achievement statement is selling them on your ability to not only take a task, but actually see results from doing that task. The best practice as you're going through writing your resume is search jobs that are currently open and review the job descriptions and see what language they're using, and you want to incorporate that language into your resume. The way I do it is I will take a resume, and there are free word cloud generators out there. I will take the resume content, put it into a word cloud generator, and whatever the biggest words that pop up that are applicable to that role, I make sure that those words are used in the resume. So it is okay to copy and paste. If you see a job posting and it has a line in there that you do, take parts of that, put it into your resume, but then front load it with your achievement. So the example is in the job description, it says that they're looking for someone with an understanding for the development of marketing plans and programs. So to build out that achievement, you're going to say that you had a 30% lift in user engagement by understanding the development of marketing plans and programs. So not only are you getting the keyword aspects into that bullet that they're looking for, but you're also highlighting your achievement around it. Another common mistake that people make is they will include an achievement in their resume, but it's hidden in the back of the bullet. So you're expecting them to read everything and before they even get to that achievement. So my structure is, and it reads differently because I start everything with an achievement. And if there's a number that we're highlighting, every single bullet in the resume is going to start with that number. It is proven that eyes are drawn to numbers. So that's the first thing that I want a company to see when my client is submitting their information is the achievement. And let's just look at a example here. So this is a real life client that actually I finished up in the last few days. The one on the left is the resume that came to me, what they were using, and the one on the right is the resume that we finished. So you'll notice that they're C-level, they're an executive, and this is what their resume looked like on the left. So they talked about spearheading application development, recruiting and hiring top talent, rebranding their website, building databases. While these things are important for a company to know that you have the technical chops, this is not C-level work. This is very task driven. When you move into the C space, they want someone who's in touch with strategy and involved in the movement of the organization to the next level. So on the right, what we did was we took a look at a few jobs that they were interested in, and we pulled out some content, and then we went over each bullet to talk about what their achievement is. So you'll notice that and I broke them up into sections because we had a lot, that he was involved in, his company is a startup, and he was involved in getting capital. So that's going to be appealing to other startups that he's looking to interview with. So I made sure to include that he did raise money, and that's the first bullet talking about that. The second is how much has he saved the company and how did he save it? And the third is how much has he grown company's revenue and how did he do that? And then the fourth is how much did he improve a process in his work and how did he do that? And then since he's a tech client, I wanted to make sure that we had a section around his technology focus, not only his responsibilities, but what he's achieved. So in his particular position, they use a marketplace to attract clients. So we talked about the improvements in the interaction throughout their marketplace and how they did that. We also talked about the pandemic. So this is a hot topic right now. What did you do during a pandemic? In most cases, in my case, it's I survived. But for some job hiring managers, they're looking for a little more detail. So in this case, because he's in charge of tech, he was able to initiate a full remote workforce within 3 hours. So we thought that that was a good bullet to add in here, especially since there were 75 people that were impacted by this and there were 0 technical incidents or business impacts. And then,
sorry, real quick.
Oh yeah.
Would you prefer questions in a minute or save them for the end?
I'm happy to take questions throughout.
Okay. We just had a quick one now, was that for when you do these bullet points or achievements and you don't know the numbers behind them, how would you kind of structure it that way?
That's a great question. Best guesses. So for example, if you know that you raised capital, do a best guess. It doesn't have to be 100% accurate, but what I err on the side of is lowballing. So if I knew I raised like 10 plus million dollars, I would say 8 million, just so I'm not lying. You know, the last thing you want to do is lie in your resume, because when you get into the interview, they're going to ask you questions around the information that you have in here. The benefit of having an achievement-based resume is that you have answers to many interview questions that are going to be thrown your way. They're already in your resume. When they ask you about, tell me a time when X, well, actually, this is an example of that, and you have it right there in front of you to share. Um, Clients that have been hired recently with Amazon, they have been specifically asked about these numbers. How did you get this number? And they were thankful that we had those conversations beforehand, so they were able to answer them. So it's important that you're not lying, but you're able to at least measure or tell them how you did it. So if you're giving a return on investment number and they ask you, how do you get that? The important part behind that number is that you can answer how you derive that number. So even if it's not 100% accurate, but you know that it was somewhere around there, you just speak confidently on, this is what it was and this is how you got that number.
Great. And then the second quick one was freelance work. Would that go in the experience section, or would that be somewhere else?
It would go in the experience section. It would look exactly like this resume here. So where it would say company confidential, you would put freelance, or you can put your company name, whatever you freelance under. And then where it says chief technology officer, you would put whatever freelance titles you have. So for example, in the entertainment space, I have clients who are directors, producers, line producers, executive directors. So we list all of those titles in that section. So if you wear multiple hats, then you can use that same format there.
Awesome, thanks.
And another thing is, if you are freelance, and say you have clients that you want them to know about, if you look at the right side resume, where it's in the experience section above business acumen, add a line that says clients, and then list the clients that you want to call out. That's helpful for freelance clients that work with big companies. They can call out, like NBC, ABC, etc. If they're small companies, but they're popular in your area and they would be known, then you can include them there too. All right, so this comes to a shock to a lot of people, but I do want to stress that your resume is not a one and done. You don't just create it once and then move on. You want to do your best to make sure that what you're sending to the company matches what they're looking for. So this means to tailor your resume for every job you send it to. And I know that can sound daunting, like, oh my gosh, like I don't have time for that. But the truth is you do. It's just how you use your time. So I'm not asking you to spend more time in your job search. I'm simply saying, as my accountant says, we work smarter, not harder. So if you're going to spend even 1 hour in a day clicking and applying to positions, and you are submitting to 40, 50 jobs, instead apply to 5 jobs and curate your resume for each job. Your search is going to results are going to drastically change. You will start hearing back from more places, and you're not going to be ghosted every time you apply. And it's important for a few reasons. One is it's demotivating. When you apply to all of these jobs and you don't hear back, you start feeling as though you don't have the skills that are needed for the position, even though you do. You start to get beat down. So job search burnout is real. So take the time to actually tailor your resume. And what I mean by tailoring really is modify your competency section. Maybe reformat the top portion of your resume and that value proposition, reword some words there that would speak more to them, and change the title at the very top of your resume to match the job that you're applying to. These small changes don't take a long time. You don't need to completely rewrite your resume. My suggestion when you're creating your resume, you're looking at, minimum of 5 job descriptions to help build out the content in your resume. You take things that you see that are consistent at least more than once that you see throughout these job descriptions, and you include it. For example, business analyst roles will often talk about bridging the gap between technology and engineering, or technology and organizational strategy. Make sure that that's language is used in your resume. And you don't need to continuously modify and update the resume significantly when you're sending it out. So some frequently asked questions that come up to me, and what I see when I'm speaking with clients, are things around, do I include work that's irrelevant to the careers I am targeting? And there is no solid answer for this. It's yes and no. For example, if you're a recent graduate, if you're a new job seeker, just graduated from college, and you have internship experience, and also you worked at the summer at like Kroger, you can take Kroger off your resume and you can focus on your internship that's relevant. If you're making a career pivot or career transition and you have experience that's completely unrelated to what you're doing, well, you're going to have to include that because that may be the only experience that you have. But you want to make sure it's written in a language that's going to show that you have the skills and ability to move into that next pivot. Another common question is, what tense do I write my resume in? And it's a good one. It's also a confusing one, because in your past positions, everything's going to be in past tense. In your present position, it's going to be mixed. So you're going to write your job duties in that summary in present tense. These are the things you do every day. But in your bullets, when you're talking about achievements, these are things that you've already done. So you are going to write those in past tense, and it's okay to have a mix. We talked about the hobbies, extracurricular, and volunteer work. And what about references? No, absolutely do not waste the real estate on your page to put references, or even a section that says available upon request. It's outdated, it ages you, and it's bad advice if someone tells you to do it. So if they want references, they'll let you know. And then we just talked about the career transition bit. If you are new in your work search, then you can put the clubs that you're in, extracurricular activities, all of those things, because those soft skills are going to be equally as important in your job search. Which I also want to mention, when you're building out the competency section, you can add a mix of hard and soft skills. So if you're good at leadership, if you're good at listening, those are things that you can list in there. Those are things that you will also find companies are looking for in LinkedIn. If you have a LinkedIn premium membership, you can see what skills that they're looking for, and they will have soft skills listed. So you can also list soft skills in your resume. And then I am ready for more questions.
You guys can feel free to ask questions in the Q&A or the chat. So we have 2 here. Do you have, is there a place on the resume for languages or language skills?
Yes, I put that in the competency section. So if you are a multilingual, I list multilingual, and then I put in the languages that you speak. If you do a graphic style resume, which I don't recommend for ATSs, but they do have graphic resumes where you can put bar graphs and list your languages. That usually goes on the left. If you're in the creative field, then you can use one of those graphic style resumes. And if you decide you want to have a graphic style resume, only use it for in-person interviewing. But those have some great formats to add separate sections for languages. But for a standard Word doc, I just include it in the competency section.
Makes sense. We had another question that was, let's see. So if you have a work gap, and this will go a long one. So let's say 10 years where you were doing one job that you wanted to be doing 10 years ago, and then for whatever reason weren't doing it, but still working the last 10, and you're trying to
Mhm.
get back into the previous field, how would you set up your experience section?
Great question. So you can actually move that relevant experience to the top and put it into two different categories. One thing that I did forget to mention that is important is your resume is a summary of your last 10, maximum 15 years of work experience. So you will have a challenge in the event that that experience was from over 10 years ago because it's not relevant today, especially if it's a tech job. You know, technology changes every day. So clients that worked in a tech role 10 years ago, today it's completely different. There are also new jobs out there that didn't exist 10 years ago. So if you are in that situation, my recommendation is move your relevant experience to the top. Don't put dates. Just list it as the experience that's relevant to the job that you're looking for, and then follow it up with your current career experience.
Great. Let's see. Another question came in. What resume format is best when you have multiple short-term jobs? I've read the recruiters and hiring managers hate functional resumes.
Yeah, so functional, chronological, I always opt to go with the chronological, but if you have a lot of short-term jobs, I have a few questions perhaps you could answer before I provide a solid answer. Were these short-term jobs through a contract agency, or were they done as a freelance, or did you just stay somewhere for a short period of time and leave?
Let's see if we get a response. Some were, some were not.
Okay, so it's a challenge because when you put a bunch of jobs with short durations, you are a flight risk to any organization that's looking to hire you. So my advice is if your job was 3 to 4 months, you leave it off. You don't include it. One reason is it's impossible to know what your achievements were during that period of time because you weren't there long enough to see the results of your efforts. And when you're building out an achievement-based resume, you really need to be able to show what those outcomes were. If they were over a year, then include them. Anything under a year, I would leave off.
Another question. Yeah, you're applying for a job that requires less experience than you have. How would you tailor your resume in that situation?
So like you have 10 years and they're looking for 7 or 5.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So there's no difference. You know, usually the 5+ years of experience is enough to qualify you for. It's usually when you have less experience that it would be an issue. Um, I would also look at your job search strategy. You know, are you above that position? Should you really be applying to that role? Are you overqualified, and is that going to be seen even in an interview? You know, so I wouldn't dumb the resume down to fit their requirements. I would side on perhaps this isn't the right fit for me. I deserve something better.
Great. I guess I personally had a question for you too. So
Sure.
you mentioned the two sections for each experience, where you have both the paragraph and the achievement points.
Yes.
So you showed a C-suite here, but if you're entry level or mid-career, would you still do that like 3 or 4 sentences or 1 or 2 sentences up top and then the bullet points, or is this only for the more experienced?
No, this is for everyone.
Okay.
So the main reason why we want to have this this no more than 5 line summary is so they can see it captures a lot of keywords for one, and you can pull these things from job descriptions. So if you look to see what a typical like marketing analyst does, that's what you want to put in there, like the typical things that a marketing analyst does. And then in the bullets, you're going to want to put the not only the things that you've done, but expand on that with those achievements. So you don't want to have a bullet that would be something that would be a summary. You want to show that there's something that we call a so what factor. If you can read something and end it with so what and it makes sense, then you don't want that to happen in your resume. So, like for example, in this resume, if you look at allowed the organization to scale the product sales and operations team, this first bullet, there's a so what. If you don't have that first part, it's like, okay, so you did that. But to eliminate that, you say you raised all of this capital that allowed you to do that. So there's more clarity around it and how you were able to achieve that.
And then we have the last question here is if they want to contact you to hire you, how do they go about doing that?
Sure. So my website is areatalent.net. It's areatalent.net. And I include like an outline of how the process works. There are all of my pricing, everything is listed there. So it's very transparent, knowing how much it costs. And I also include, you have access to testimonials and reviews and examples and things like that as well.
Great. Now you can also reply to the invite and we can get you in touch with Don too, if that's awesome. Both ways will work. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming. Don, thank you very much for presenting. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you all.